You're listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
We're back. It's a brand new Friday, a brand new episode, and as always, thanks for choosing to listen to this little old podcast. Hope you're all doing good, and today I'm excited to bring you a chat with Ted Felicetti, singer and guitarist of the band Don't Panic, music industry booking supremo, and of course, something of a requirement of this podcast, 80s movie fan. Now, Ted and I got to know each other out on the road back in February on the Don't Panic and Dolly Rots UK tour, and I was hugely impressed with how professional and passionate Ted was with his band. For me, when you meet people who truly love what they do and make it happen so professionally and really care about what the people think, and from a band point of view to make sure the audience really get their money's worth and have a great time, it's an awesome thing to see, and that in turn, it fuels my drive with anything I do. So Ted has this in bucket load, so I hope you enjoy this chat. We dive into his childhood growing up with his brother Rob, who some of you will know from the band Bowling for Soup, their early passions for Star Wars, Marvel Comics and WWF, through to the early steps into music, earning his DIY stripes out on Warped Tour, and what he thinks of the 40th anniversary release of Return of the Jedi. It's all here and coming up shortly. This episode of the Straight to Video podcast is proudly presented to you in association with Affinity Photo. Affinity Photo is a really cool piece of photo editing software which I use for graphic design, and you can see it used to create the podcast's episode artwork you see each week. And what's really cool is that it's an extremely affordable alternative to other programs out there. So if you can, please check them out at affinity.serif.com. Ted and his band Don't Panic have a brand new single called Numb, which is out today, April 21st, and they will be out on tour in just a few weeks. All tour dates and info can be found at don'tpanicofficial.com, but right now, please enjoy my straight to video talk with Ted Felicetti.
How you been?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, you too.
How's your day going? Keeping busy?
Insanely busy.
Yeah? Even for Easter weekend?
I never take a break. I just always work.
Yeah.
I went to my brother's house.
Is Rob far from you?
Like 45 minutes. Yeah, it's not too bad. So I went there, saw my nephew.
I'm going to say, how's it being an uncle? You enjoying it?
I love it. Yeah, I love it. We spent a lot of time yesterday together. It was great.
You've been busy since you got back from the UK?
Yeah, it's just been nonstop, man. Yeah, I mean, just booking, and we're working on a new record and have some more tour dates coming up. So it's just been like, I have like no time.
This year's just going way too fast. I say it every year.
But this one's particularly insane. I can't believe it's mid-April.
I know.
This is insane.
Where did you and Rob grow up? Have you always been based in and around Pennsylvania?
No. So I was born in Queens, New York, and so was Rob. I lived there from my year of birth, which is 1984.
Good year.
Yeah, it was a great year. Until 1994. So I was there for 10 years. Yeah, we lived in Bayside, which is in Queens.
Is that where the band gets the name from? Because I know you're a fan of that.
That is, yes. They're from Bayside as well. I've spoken to Anthony a few times. He lived on the same street that I lived on, actually. He lived in like Northern Boulevard, which is where I lived.
Wow. When did they come onto your radar?
Actually, they came onto my radar right before I met them. My old band was called Split 50, and we were recording what will be our third album. We had gotten a producer, his name is Shep Goodman, and he was producing the record. We went into Manhattan. We were going to start working with him, and he did a lot of pop stuff. He did LFO and Mandy Moore and Brooke Hogan, like that kind of stuff. We weren't sure, like, if, he doesn't really do any rock. We didn't really know his deal. But then he was like, I just recorded this band Bayside, like kind of a new band. Take a listen. And then he played on his console like it was still being mixed. So it hadn't been out yet. It was the song Devotion and Desire. I love that song. And then we wound up playing with them a whole bunch just because of being kind of connected that way. So that was like 2006 or so. When I met them, I was like, hey, are you guys from Bayside? And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, me too. Yeah, so I grew up right in Bayside, Queens, right on Northern Boulevard.
Did that change a lot? Because I mean, obviously you were there for quite a while as a kid and stuff. You remember it changing much?
Not when I was there, but I've been back a few times. It looks kind of the same, to be honest. New York's interesting because, like, I live out in Pennsylvania now. This is changing constantly. But that's because we're kind of in the country and they're always developing. Here's a new mall. Here's a new, whatever, tons of Amazon warehouses being built. And like,
that's all it's going to be after a while.
I'm just going to live in Amazon warehouses at some point. You have to rent out your space. But Queens, Manhattan, I mean, there's nowhere left to build. So the only thing that really changes is who occupies what buildings. But all the buildings are the same. They're not really knocking buildings down or building new ones. So like out where I live in Bayside, every time I go there, it's like, oh, that used to be this kind of store, but it's still the same building. It still all looks the same. My mom lived there with my grandparents in the 60s and 70s. It was very Italian. I'm 100% Italian. My grandparents are off the boat, Italy. And since then, it's become very Korean. All the signs on the buildings are all in Korean lettering. That's the biggest change, I would say, out of everything is when I go there. And even when I went to school, I went to PS 31, which was right on the block from where I lived. And when I was in first, second, third grade, my class was even like mostly Korean, Chinese. I was like one of 4 white kids in my class kind of thing. Yeah, so I was used to that growing up, but the buildings themselves weren't not all Korean owned, and now it's very Korean owned area.
Is it just you and Rob, who's your younger brother, or do you have any other siblings? Or is it just the two of you?
Just me and my brother Rob, and then my parents had gotten divorced in like, I would say 97 or so after we moved to Pennsylvania, and my mom got remarried in 2002, and her new husband, who's my stepdad, he had 2 kids. So I have 2 stepbrothers also. I didn't know them before, but they were into school with my brother. So like, it was weird because like he knew them from school. And then it's like, oh, and our parents are getting married now. It's kind of weird.
Families, mate, there's no like set rule for how things work out. I could go down a deep old tunnel. You need a map to figure my family out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What were the two of you into as kids growing up? I think it's 2 years between the two of you. So that's not really much of a difference as you're growing up, I guess. So did you have similar interests?
Very much. As younger kids, our favorite things were Marvel, loved Marvel comics. We had tons of comic books. I don't know if you remember in the early 90s, they had Marvel cards, whereas like everyone collected them and have like Spider-Man and Punisher. So we collected the hell out of those things, and Marvel toys. We just loved Captain America and the Fantastic Four. I was like very big into that. And then my main passion, and my brother's too, growing up, was Star Wars. But this was before there was the prequel movies. It was just the original 3 movies. Yeah, that's all you had. And we had it on VHS. It wasn't even remastered yet. So it was just these old 80s VHS that was like kind of looked shitty. And I loved it. It was like my favorite thing in the world. We watched those so many times.
Who introduced you to that?
My cousins. So we come from I think a fairly large family, 9 cousins. My mom has 3 siblings and all of them had 3 kids. We're all about the same age. My oldest cousin, Paul, I think he maybe just turned 50. And my youngest cousins are like in their mid 20s. But the main chunk of us were all, 80s kids. So we were born from like 77 to like 87. It was like that 10-year gap. So we all hung out. And my oldest cousin, Paul, and his brother, Steven, they saw Star Wars in the theater.
They're my age.
Yeah. And they had all the Kenner toys.
Did you get the hand-me-downs then?
Yeah, I've got a bunch.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. I mean, they have most of them. Me and Rob had to collect kind of our own Kenner stuff. And then Hasbro had released them in the mid-90s.
All the bulked up ones.
Yeah, they're all beefed up. Yeah, they're so stupid looking. But I have a ton of them.
I probably did the same thing as everybody else. Brought them because that's when we thought they was going to be valuable, because all the old stuff, it got valuable.
Yeah, because all the old ones were... Well, for a while they weren't, though. The old ones, you would find them at flea markets on the table, just like tons of stormtroopers, and we would grab them. I had a Darth Vader and a Bib Fortuna, who's like Jabba the Hutt's like right-hand man guy. I had those 2 toys since I can't even remember having toys. I was so young. I had to have been 3. And I had those 2 toys, but I had no idea what they were from. So I just always would play with these guys, but I didn't know what they were.
Just look cool.
Yeah. And then my cousins introduced me to Star Wars, and it was mind-blowing. Actually, the first one I saw was Return of the Jedi. We watched them backwards. So I really had no idea what was going on, but I was 10, so I was just enjoying the spectacle because they wanted us to see the most exciting one in their opinion. Then we watched Empire, and then we watched New Hope. I mean, as soon as I saw them, I loved them so much. We had our mom buy us the VHS set, and then they had re-released them in the theaters in the mid-90s, and we went to see them in the theater. That's when they put out those bulky character toys, and, then they started doing the prequels and all that other stuff. Yeah, Star Wars, Marvel, those were our 2 real big things when we were kids growing up.
Do you like a bit of wrestling as well? We spoke about that in the past.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Wrestling, I was really big into. when I was young, like in the late 80s and early 90s. And it was like Hogan and Macho Man and Jake the Snake and Bam Bam and Honky Tonk and like all those characters. And my cousin on my dad's side used to have like the rubber wrestling guys that were like just always doing like the strongman positions. You know, they couldn't move. They were just big rubber. And we'd play with those all the time. He had all of them. And then I stopped watching wrestling for a while. And then when I got into high school, it was like the Attitude Era of WWE, which is like the best, I think, undisputed era of watching that show. We had like Stone Cold and Bret Hart and The Undertaker and The Rock. And me and my brother got back into wrestling because we were like, oh, this is so ridiculous. It's just so insane. I remember every Thursday, or I think it was every Thursday. It was before they had SmackDown. They added SmackDown and it was just Raw for a while. And we would watch Raw and then they added SmackDown. And then that was on Thursday nights, I think. And then every Thursday we would go to the pizza place by our house and hang out with all my friends. But then we'd all rush home for SmackDown at night, like on our bikes, I remember. Yeah, so definitely wrestling, Marvel and Star Wars. And actually a big thing I was into growing up was Magic the Gathering, the card game.
Right, I'm not familiar.
Okay, it's kind of like Pokemon now. It was like that, but it was like in the early 90s. It was a card game. It got enormous, and not back when I was playing it, but recently. And they have like big tournaments and all this money. And yeah, it's crazy, but I used to play it.
Is that one of those things where you think, I wish I'd carried it on? Or have you carried it on? Because I could have made a mint.
Oh, I mean, the stuff that I had back then is worth absurd amounts of money. Me and my friend Ian, I think you might have met Ian before. He's Bowling for Soup's guitar tech. He's got the glasses. And so he was me and my brother's other best friend. We all hung out, the three of us, and when we moved to Pennsylvania. And he and I, we met because we both played this card game. So this is like 98 or so. We were actively collecting the original set of this cards, you know, then whatever. We stopped playing it and we lost them, or I don't know what happened to them. And I found out like 5-6 years ago that the original set is worth like $100,000. It's like an insane amount of money.
Damn it.
We're like, Jesus Christ. Like,
it's the Star Wars thing again. Everyone just played with it and then just threw it away.
Yeah, you'd play with the cards and you would just like shuffle them like poker cards. You know, you didn't care. And then like now it's like they have to be in perfect condition. Like the ones we had were played and, you know, we used them and stuff. I did wind up getting back into playing that game for a little bit, maybe 10 years ago, just for fun, because I saw it's still going on. Holy shit. I'd met a couple of friends and played a couple tournaments and stuff, and it was fun. I don't have the time anymore, but it was cool, you know, and I still have a bunch of them in my closet. You know, they're worth a little bit of money, but I'd sold the cards that I'd held on to that I still had. I sold them all and I bought our band's van with them.
Well, there you go. It had to be done. I think I've heard you say one of the first things that sparked your interest in music, or particularly playing the guitar, was seeing Back to the Future and Marty McFly.
Sure was. Yes.
Playing at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. When was that?
You are correct. So my dad is a musician. He used to play at bars and stuff like that. And he was like, you know, cover guy. And when we were growing up, so we lived in New York, and then when we moved to Pennsylvania for a little bit till my parents separated, he would play at like bars, and sometimes my mom would take me and my brother and we'd watch him. And I thought it was really cool. I just had I don't know. I love music, and I always did. I never had the interest to learn how to play it. Then when we moved to Pennsylvania, I started singing. I did like community theater for a little bit. My mom, she wanted me to like just do something, because me and my brother both were kind of like, you know, we were sad. We moved to a new state. We didn't know anybody. All of our friends were back in New York.
What age was you then?
I was 10. Yeah, I was 10 years old.
Yeah, that's a big move.
Yeah, age. It's before high school, but it's like you've spent the first 8 years of your life meeting all your friends, and, you know, you're really tight. So I was pretty sad, and my mom was trying to get me to like just do things. You know, why don't you try this? Why don't you play baseball? Why don't you join the basketball team? Like, you know, whatever. So she got me to do theater, and I did some theater for a little bit. And then I found out that I'd inherited some musical ability from my dad, I guess, and I was a decent singer. So then my mom had convinced me to like join this like singing boys choir, which I have tons of stories about that if you want to hear about that. I was like 13 and I was in this singing boys choir. So I could sing really good, and I had like real professional training now. And then I saw Back to the Future, and that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
It's one of my perfect movies.
Yeah, it is. It is a perfect movie. It really is. There's nothing wrong with it. And I saw Marty like start jamming Johnny Be Good, and I was like, I want to do that. That is fucking cool. He's just like going buck wild on this guitar, and the crowd's like, what the hell's going on? I just loved everything about that scene, and it made me want to play guitar. So I remember telling my dad, I was like, I want to learn how to play the guitar. And he's like, okay. So they got me this like shitty acoustic guitar, and I have a great relationship with my dad, and he wound up leaving when we were like 13, 14 years old. But I had just gotten this guitar. I had no one to teach me, so I just taught myself. And as I was teaching myself, my brother was like interested, and he liked music too. And so we decided, okay, I already play the guitar. You have to play something different. So he was like, well, I'll learn how to play the drums then. And then we met our friend Ian, like I said. He doesn't really have like a natural music bone in his body, but he's like, well, I want to be involved. So we're like, all right, the only other instrument you could get is the bass. You have to learn how to play bass. I already have the guitar, and Rob, he's going to play the drummer. So it's like, okay. So he just like went and bought a bass, and we had to sit there and teach him how to play. Like, we had to teach Ian like beat, we would like sit there and like clap and make him go bump, 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 like, all right, come on. Like, he'd like kind of teach him how to play to, a clap.
Is this the band Shortwave Radio?
Yes. So this was our first band. That's how it started. Ian knew this kid who lived like in between his house and our house. We lived about 2 miles apart. So it was about a mile in between us, and who had a drum set for sale for $60. And it was like just a couple of drums and some cracked cymbals. And Ian's like, oh, this guy will sell Rob a drum set for $65 if we have to come get it. But we were 15. We didn't have a car. So we all walked. He walked a mile and we walked a mile. We all grabbed drums and then we walked back to my house. So we're like walking down like the road with all these like drums and cymbals and like all the cars driving by. There's no sidewalks in Pennsylvania. So we're just kind of walking like in the dirt, like on the side of the road, but kind of near the forest. But yeah, that's how we started our first band. So I was like 1998 or so, 99.
Where was you rehearsing?
In my basement at my house. So with my dad gone, my mom was working 2 to 3 jobs at a time sometimes. And she was just never home. She was always at work. I don't know if they use the term in England, but in America, it's called a latchkey kid. So that's what we were. We got off the bus, we had our key, we'd let ourselves in, we'd make ourselves food. Like, we took care of ourselves.
Are you like one of the last generations of the latchkey kid?
Have to be.
Must
have to be. People are too terrified to do that kind of stuff these days, right? I have to be one of the last generation of that. So we'd practice in my basement because no one was home. No one would yell at us. Ian would come over and me and Rob drums and the guitars, and we would just play and we'd learn other people's songs, and we were just learning basically whatever was on the radio. I had not discovered punk rock music yet properly. I had known Green Day and Nirvana, whatever was mainstream version of that. This late 90s, like Blink still wasn't even on the radio yet. I'm not a big Blink fan, but my brother is. So we were just learning other old rock and roll music that I grew up on, because that's my parents, Beatles, Creedence Clearwater Revival, the Eagles, Clapton, Tom Petty, that's all the stuff we grew up on. That's all the music I like.
Well, that's one thing I like about America when I go over there. That stuff is still regularly on the radio. Like,
oh, yeah,
you don't hear that over here. It's different now because you've got so many like digital radio stations. But for a long time, you'd never hear stuff like that on the radio.
Oh, we have stations just devoted to that music. And then, we had our cassette players and stuff. I think I just got my first CD player. My first CD I bought myself was Dookie, because I had the tape and I wanted to transfer it to my new CD, my first of my CD collection, But yeah, so we would learn that stuff, and then we would learn songs that were on the radio. Not that even we really liked the music, but we didn't know anything. So we were just like, well, you have to learn what's popular so that if you wanted to play at like a bar, they want to have us play, like we had no idea what we were doing. We were 14 years old. I was like 15 maybe. We learned like Sugar Ray and Everclear, and that was like late 90s radio, and then Lit, when they put out that My Own Worst Enemy song in the late 90s. We were like learning that kind of music, and then we were learning like CCR, Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of what we were doing for a little while. We never got good, but we were okay. It was all right. So what wound up happening was that band, when we started, we called ourselves Blunt, but not like smoking weed. It was actually named after a blunt slide on skateboarding, because Ian was a skateboarder. There's a magazine, it was like Blunt. And so we thought, oh, that's cool.
What was your logo like? Do you remember?
So Rob's a really good artist, and he drew it. He drew the lettering. I don't remember exactly what it looks like anymore. It was very generic. It was just said Blunt, He just wrote it out, and then we would like scan it, because you'd make your own flyers at the photocopy place, if you remember. You'd tape stuff to a piece of paper and then photocopy that, and that was your flyers, because we didn't have a computer to print shit out, or Photoshop or anything like that. So we started that as Blunt, and we did like a bunch of like cover things, like not at a bar, but we would play like my mom's friend was the guy who books the stuff at this ski resort. Oh, they let us play on a Sunday at 2:00, play like for an hour, and we'd play like Sugar Ray and CCR and the Beatles and whatever. I'm sure it was terrible.
Thank God you didn't have cell phones then.
I know.
Or it would be cool if you did have cell phones to look back
Yeah,
on.
It'd be cool to have like a video or two, but it would be so terrible to watch. I know it. And we would play like open mics. Ian's mom would drive us all to wherever, and we'd play 3 songs at an open mic here or there.
Do you do Johnny Be Good?
No, that's the ironic thing, is I never thought I'd be good enough to play that song. I was like, oh, it's just too hard. I'm not a great guitar player. I'm like still not even a great guitar player, but I could play it now finally. But back then I could play the blues part, but it was the lead that I really wanted to learn how to play. And I tried. I couldn't get it. So we didn't play that one. And I would have loved that.
You did get to recreate the Battle of the Bands audition though in the Fall of '99 video.
We We sure did. Yeah, it came full circle with Don't Panic. That was the first music video I ever made in my life.
That turned out freaking great.
Oh, thank you. So I was just like, I've known what I want to do ever since I seen that movie, what I want to do for a music video. So it was fun to do. So we played a bunch of cover gigs, and then we met this kid, James, and he joined our band as a lead guitar player. So we had a 4-piece. What wound up happening was we met this other kid, we called him Skater Mike, and he went to high school with us. And he listened to all sorts of music that we had never heard of before. So it was like No Use for a Name and Face to Face and Lagwagon and Descendants and NoFX. And I was like, what is this stuff? Like, I've never even heard of this.
It's so important to meet somebody like that.
Yeah, Skater Mike, man. It's Mike Kieski is his name. And we met him and he started showing us his CD collection. And like, you go to shows, like they play their own music. You play like fire halls and we'd be like, holy shit. So he introduced us to this guy, Zach, who's a singer of a local band like that called Split 50. And so then he took us to that guy Zach's house, had a recording studio. We're like, oh my God, we could record our own songs. So we started writing our own songs. And what wound up happening was James left the band. We had Mike, who was learning how to play guitar. He joined our band. And then we started writing like punk rock music because like we started to get really into it. And I remember my very first punk rock show was at the Fire Hall in Tannersville, Pennsylvania. I think it was 2000. And it was this band called Bigwig, who's from New Jersey. They did a record on Fat. And they did something on Fearless and Kung Fu. So they were like touring with all the bands at that time, Strung Out and Good Riddance and the Ataris and, all these bands. So we went and saw that show and I was like, this is it. I've now found like what I want to do with my music stuff.
So you'd actually been playing before you'd actually seen a gig?
Yeah, but we were playing, like I said, cover gigs and...
Yeah, but that's quite interesting, though, that you'd actually started playing and doing stuff yourselves.
Yeah, I never had seen like a show where 3 bands played their own music and you paid $5 at the kid at the door at the fire hall and then a bunch of PA speakers set up on top of each other. And so when I saw that, I was like, I want to be a part of this. Like, this is what I want to do. And the first thing we did was we changed our band name. Everyone was like, oh, you guys like smoke pot, like laughing at it. We were 15.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And we're like, this is stupid. So we changed our name to Shortwave Radio. Fall of 99 is like when we started our first band.
Oh, superb.
That's what that song's about. So we started playing a lot. And honestly, we played until about 2002. By the end of it, our band was actually becoming like a real band. Like I was 18. We were starting to tour, did tour dates with like Rise Against and Catch 22. And we played a bunch of shows like Coheed and Cambria and My Chemical Romance. Yellow Card we played a bunch with. But at that time, these bands weren't the thing you're thinking of. You know what I mean? We're fire hall shows. 200 people, you pay $5 or whatever, like the local club that holds 150 folks. These bands weren't big yet. They were the good version of what we were doing, but they weren't huge.
How cool to see all those just as they were bubbling under.
Oh, I've seen all of them.
Some of these went on to be massive bands. Could you see something happening there?
100%. Yellow Card for sure. We played with them in a place called the Pontiac Grill, J.B. Dobbs in Philadelphia, which is like a classic place. There's 150 people there, and I just watched this band. And I was like, this band is so much better than what we're doing.
This is next level.
Yeah, it just was a more professional package. You see it, and like they have the good gear, and they have the nice merch, and they have a van with a trailer, and they're tight, got tattoos, and they're 20 years old. Every time we would move up, we'd always be like, all right, we're gonna idolize and follow these bands. Again, I don't really listen to Yellow Card. I'm not a big fan of their music. I got really big into, like I said, Face to Face, No Use for a Name, Strung Out, NoFX, Bad Religion. Like that's like what I grew up on. We would play with those bands though, and you go, this band is going to be huge. And you could see the crowds getting bigger and bigger. And we played a show at a church parking lot with this band Reliant K, and they're like a Christian kind of band, but they're like pop punk. They're pretty popular in the States. I remember seeing them, A, thinking like, yeah, this band's gonna be really big too, and B, we lied to get onto the show and pretend to be a Christian band because only Christian bands were allowed to play.
What was your spiel?
I don't remember. I had to write like a mission statement. I had to send it to the church. You know what I mean? But yeah, I had to mail it. I was on the phone with like the priest or whoever was booking the thing. And I was like, yeah, we're a Christian band. Like, we're all about Jesus and whatever. And I had to write this like mission statement about how our band's like there to like empower people to be positive and God and whatever. And then we mailed it and like we got on the show.
They bought it.
Yeah. The only other band at the time that I knew that was a Christian band was MXPX. And at the time they were, because they used to be a Christian pop punk band. They kind of changed their tune a bit.
So you aren't saying like my favorite band Striper and all that?
No, I'd say like, oh, we love MXPX. Like that's our favorite band, I remember another show we played. It was in a fire hall basement. There was like 45 people there. It was on a Tuesday night, and it was RX Bandits and the Starting Line. and then my old band opening. And you see the starting line play, and RX Bandits were unbelievable. I was like, these bands are going to be so big. Like, it was called the Drive Through Records tour because Drive Through Records had just started, and they were doing the tour of, like, it was like Alistair, starting line, RX Bandits. They were just kind of setting them up, promoting the label. Yeah, I was like, wow, this is going to be a big thing. And yeah, that Drive Through Records blew up 2 years later or whatever.
Did Bowling for Soup ever come through your town when they were early days?
So what wound up happening was shortwave radio broke up. My mom wouldn't let my brother play anymore because we were touring too much, and he was still in high school. He was 16. So she said, he can't play anymore. But I didn't know any other drummers. So we were just like, okay. Like, I didn't know any drummers who were good enough. Like, my brother's a good drummer. So me and Ian were like, all right, so we don't know what to do. So we took a year and just kind of hung out and trying to figure out what we were going to do. And then in the meantime, the local band Split 50 that I brought up and asked me to join as a guitar player. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try and take this opportunity because this band's really good. They're doing a bunch of stuff. So I wound up joining that band. And we wound up getting on the Warped Tour a whole bunch of years.
Is that when you got to dip your toes into like booking and promoting? Because you got like heavily involved into doing something at one of the smaller stages.
Yeah, it comes from that. So the first few years we played Warped Tour in 2002 before I was in the band Split 50, got on Warped Tour because they won something called the Ernie Ball Battle of the Bands. And you play on the Ernie Ball stage at the Warped Tour in your closest hometown. It was Asbury Park. So the Split 50 played that year. And then Kevin Lyman, the owner, invited Split 50 in 2003 to come back for 3 shows instead. So we're like, oh, wow, we're getting more. And I joined the band at this point. So like, yeah, we're going to play Asbury Park again, and we're going to play Philly, which is Camden, and we're going to play New York, which is called Randall's Island. So they put us on the Ernie Ball stage in 2003. And in that year, Bowling for Soup was the headliner of the Ernie Ball stage. So we played in Randall's Island. I remember we were the last smaller band to play, and then they were going to start having like the bigger bands on the stage play. So we were breaking down our stuff. I remember getting off the stage, and then this massive crowd formed around the Ernie Ball stage, and Bowling for Soup started playing. I was like, who the fuck is this band? Like, I had no idea who they were. I think their first single had not gone to radio yet at that point, but they were just starting to get popular. But they never played local to us outside of that, really. Or if they did, I never paid attention or never went, you know. The next time I saw them was years and years later, probably 2000 and I want to say 10. My brother was playing in Patent Pending, and they were on tour opening for Bowling for Soup. Actually, the tour was Bowling for Soup and then the Dolly Rots and Patent Pending. I never heard of the Dolly Rots. So I went to hang out with my brother. It was like kind of close by, about 45-minute drive. And I met Jarrett and all those guys at that show. I just went up to the green room. My brother brought me up, introduced me, and that was kind of it. Yeah, then I met them right there.
Have you ever seen the movie Punk Like Me by Rich Wilkes?
No, I have not, no.
I'll have to send you a link to it because it's probably around that time frame. Rich Wilkes is the guy who wrote and directed the movie Airheads. Can you remember that film with Brendan Fraser?
Oh, I love Airheads. Yeah, oh yeah.
Rich wrote that film, and I think he directed it or produced it. I'm not sure, but he's like a rock guy. Played drums in bands, and he's the guy who created the Triple X franchise with Vin Diesel and all this kind of stuff.
Okay,
yeah. So he's doing all right.
Yeah.
When he got into like his late 30s, early 40s, he's like, I'm really missing being in a band. So he managed to blag his way onto the Warped Tour. He got in touch with Kevin Lynam, said he'd do like all these interviews with some bands, but could his band play? And Kevin Lynam agreed, but the only thing was Rich Wilkes didn't have a band. Oh, so he had to get a band together with all his mates. They didn't have any material. And they did this band called Carne Asada, which was Mexican mariachi punk rock.
I think I remember that. What year was this?
It would be probably around like mid-2000s sometime.
Yeah, I definitely remember that.
Yeah.
So I was on Warped Tour from 2003 until 2012.
Right.
We did 10 of them.
Yeah.
Each year we would do more. So in 2003, we played the 3 dates, and we played the Ernie Ball stage. In 2004, we played 5 dates. 4 of them were on the Kevin Says stage, which was like Kevin Lyman's like hand-picked stage. You'd pick like just small bands that he was friends with or that he liked, and he put Split 50 on. And then the last day, we had just signed with a record company called Hellbent Records, which is like did like a bunch of underground like punk rock kind of stuff. Not like us though. We were very more Alkaline Trio kind of sounding, yeah, like a rock and roll Alkaline Trio. So we didn't sound like that, but we signed this label called Hellbent Records, and the owner was friends with this band called the Phenomenauts. And the Phenomenauts are kind of like the Aquabats. They're very similar, but their theme was like space robots. They'd wear these big costumes, and they're kind of like a fun pop punk ska thing. And they had a stage that they did every year in the Warped Tour called the Space Station stage, which was just basically an RV covered in all these like crazy spaceship things. And they'd park it at the Warped Tour, set up a couple of PA speakers on, you know, some stands, and then bands would just play on the floor in front of the RV. And that was the Space Station stage. You just played right on the concrete on the floor next to 2 speakers on stands, like a fire hall.
Every everything's silver and metallic, so it's even hotter than it normally.
Everything was silver and metallic. It was bright silver, spray painted. So the owner, Joe from Hellbent, was like, I can get you guys on one more date. And it was the Hershey date. It was a brand new date they never really did at Warped Tour before. And that was like our home show. So we're like, we really want to play this one. So he got us on. And after it was over, we hit them up that fall. And we're like, hey, like we want to come back and do more shows on the space station stage. We had a great time because we just wanted to be on Warped Tour. We didn't care. And they were like, oh, actually, guys, like we're not doing it anymore. Like this was our last year. We're like, oh man, it's like who's doing that like small DIY stage? Like nobody. So we're like, well, we could do it. Could you guys give us Kevin Lyman's phone number? And they're like, yeah, sure. So they gave us Kevin Lyman's phone number, and me and Zach just sat there and we called him. We're like, hey, Kevin, this is Split 50. Like you had us on last year. Thanks so much. Just talked to Phenomenauts, and they said they're not doing the space station stage next year. Would it be cool if we put together the DIY stage? And he's like, yeah, sure. That was it. Then we were just like, okay. And we got off the phone and we're like, uh-oh, like now what? Like we had no idea what to do. So we started to like come up with ideas, and we were like, well, we gotta start doing our stage on the Warped Tour. I guess we gotta find some bands to play. And then we gotta like get a PA and stage and a vehicle and a trailer. And like,
holy shit. Yeah. What have we just set ourselves up for?
So then
that
we spent the next like 8 months just putting this thing together. You know, it's pretty sloppy, but we got the job done. We got Samson, the company Samson, to send us a PA. We're just like, if you guys send us 2 subs and like 4 PA speakers and some microphones and cables, we'll put your logo on the banner behind this that we'll hang up every day. And they're like, okay, that's fine. They just gave us it's probably $1,000 of equipment, you know? Okay, now we need to get a backline. So we called Hartke. Hey, would you guys give us a couple guitar cabs and a bass rig? We'll put your logo on our banner really big, and we'll make sure the bands, you have to use your gear every day. So they sent us 2 guitar cabs and a bass cab and a bass head. Cool. So now we got a backline, we got a PA. All right, now we got to get a stage. So we then decided we're going to try and find a sponsor who would present the stage, and then we'd use the money they gave us to buy like staging decks or rent. So that's what we did. So we started looking around companies and record labels and who wants to present our stage. And like we raised like $5,000. It was not a lot, but we raised some money. We rented a motorhome, got a trailer, and we didn't make any money, obviously, but we made it. You know, we booked a bunch of cool bands that we were friends with. There's like a local band by us called Motionless in White. They're really good friends of ours, and we put them on a stage. And this band Versus the World was on the tour, just following it around, and they had a better stage platform. So like, if you guys let us play every day, like you can use our drum riser staging platform to make the stage a little deeper. Bought like a big circus 20 by 20 tent that we like bungee corded down. It looked so shitty, but it was cool. It was ours, and it was literally the spirit of it. Like a DIY, like small bands. Everyone's playing for free, you know.
What was the turnouts like for your stage?
I get 100 people at first. It was cool. It was just cool to be there and have like a merch tent set up and sell merch to people. And the playing on Warped Tour was always like the smallest part of the day. The biggest part was always being at your merch tent, interacting with people walking by, getting them to come listen to your CD on the headphones. So the first year was rough, but the second year got better. Third year got even better. And every year we were getting bigger sponsors. So then we started at the point where we were raising like $100,000. We were getting a real stage. We were booking real bands. From like 2006, we got our tour bus. We had raised enough money to make that happen. Every year it got better. The staging got better. The PA got better. The sponsors got better. And we just kept doing it every year over and over and over. And we had a lot of bands on the stage that we were friends with that were from the Northeast. That was like a hookup. We'd hook you guys up. You guys could play on the Warped Tour for 5 shows. Can we come play with you in where you're from? Or can we do this festival? We were friends with the guys in All Time Low because they're from Northern Virginia, DC area. They were small. Nobody knew who they were. And the deal with them was that they came to play 2 or 3 shows, but they had to come build the stage every morning. So they'd come every morning and they'd be like setting up all the legs and, you know, like turning all those screws and all that kind of stuff.
Warped Tour just operated like nothing else.
It was unbelievable. It was definitely like nothing else. And everyone was there working their asses off, sweating and getting sunburnt, eating barbecue at the end of the night. It was wonderful. And I don't know if it'll ever come, you know, you'll ever get anything like that again. Probably not. I don't think so.
So this was all your DIY training for what became your career for like the next 10 years or so.
It is exactly. So how I got in a booking from that was my job on it, on top of being like production manager, was I booked the stage. So I set up a schedule. I would be the one who was booking the bands on each day.
Was you enjoying that, or it was just a necessity necessity that, well, I guess I'll have to do this.
It was like both. It was a necessity, and it would get very stressful sometimes, but it was also cool to be like on the phone with people who were our friends, because once everyone heard that we had a Warped Tour stage, my phone would just ring off the hook. Like, can we play? Joe from Patent Pending would call me every single, like clockwork, every whatever it would be, September. All right, Ted, you guys start booking the stage yet? Let's get Patent Pending on. Come on, you know. So at first it was necessity. Once I got a hang of it, I enjoyed it. We wanted it to be a legit company that was running it because we started to bring lots of money in. So we were like, well, we should start a company and then do something with that company. So we started a company and we called it East Coast Independent. And on my home time from Warped Tour, because Warped Tour is my summer job, we would book shows. We rent out venues in the Northeast, book bands, put on shows, and I was a show promoter. That's kind of like how I got my foot into the music industry as a business aspect. And it was, again, only because I couldn't really hold a normal job because I was gone all summer. I worked at a pizza place and I was making pizza. And I was like, well, I don't want to do this. This fucking sucks. And I was like in my early 20s. So we started the Warped Tour stage. And then I was like, all right, well, when I'm home, I'm going to run shows now. That's my job. And you know, sometimes it sucked and you lose a fuck ton of money. And sometimes it was good and you make some money. But it's just keep the lights on until Warped Tour every year.
Dope Panic formed around 2009, so kind of at the tail end of that, but then you went on like an extended hiatus doing all the booking and stuff like that. And how was it for all of you to get Don't Panic back together again? Had you all stayed in touch?
Yeah, so Keith, our bass player, was the bass player of Split 50 also. So when Split 50 broke up, we still had the Warped Tour stage for a little bit. So we would put our new projects on a couple shows here and there, but at that point, it was like a business. Because it started off as just a reason to get Split 50 on a Warped Tour. At the end of it, this was like a 6-figure business that we were like, we have to be professional. We can't just keep setting ourselves up on everything. So when Split 50 broke up, me and Keith started Don't Panic, and we had made friends with this guy AJ, who I got introduced to by our drummer Anthony. And Anthony was the original drummer of my brother's band, who was called Pull the Pin. So my brother, during all that Warped Tour time, had started his own band called Pull the Pin, which is kind of like a Blink-182 NoFX sounding band. And Anthony was their drummer. So when his band broke up and he joined Patent Pending, Anthony wasn't doing anything. And then when Split 50 broke up, I called Anthony. I was like, hey, you know, I'm starting like a Foo Fighters-y kind of thing now. Do you want to play? So it was me and Keith, and Anthony I'd known for a long time already. So we were already just friends. We always talk anyway. So Don't Panic started in 2009, played until 2011. And then once we were done playing, and we were like, all right, we're going to take a break for a little bit. Wound up being a lot bit. In the interim, we still all talked all the time. We're still friends. Keith wound up moving to Florida. Anthony got like a full-time job as a dealer at a casino. AJ started working at a recording studio. So we all kept in touch. So when we got back together, it was just like, hey, I'm going to start this band again. If you want to be doing it, it's your band. Like, come. If you don't, it's totally cool. I'll find somebody else. But all three of them are like, yeah, let's do it. That sounds great.
So I don't think you've been like actually playing guitar or anything during that time. How would your songwriting changed in that time?
A lot, apparently. I hadn't picked up my guitar in years. Like in 2019, I had not played a chord on my guitar probably in 5 years. I don't know why or how that happened. Just life. I started booking bands full time, and like not at clubs. I became a booking agent. So I was booking bands full time, their tours and all that kind of stuff. And I just hadn't thought about it. And I don't know, something about it. I felt weird even touching my guitar at that point. It was just like in my closet. I was really afraid to start up again. Not that I think I'm a great songwriter personally, but we had released one EP in 2009. It was like 5 or 6 songs. And I was just like, I don't even know if I can do that. So I just kind of sat with my guitar in my basement. I was rediscovering bands that I loved that I hadn't even listened to in years. It was almost like rediscovering the music that I had rediscovered the first time in the late 90s, hearing Face to Face for the first time, or NoFX or Bad Religion. I loved all these bands, but I hadn't listened to any of their new records in almost a decade. And that's like this huge library of new music to listen to. And that really sparked a lot of inspiration for me to be like, this is really cool. Like, these are new ideas. Something about listening to all those old bands that I liked, new albums, got me all excited to like write my own new album.
A whole new chapter for you, mate.
Yeah, it really was. We always joke because like the popular thing nowadays in the movies, soft reboots, they do a movie, but it's the exact same as the original one, but just some new stuff. So that's what we was joking, like, Don't Panic is going to be a soft reboot. And the original plan for our first album back was basically to re-record the old EP.
Kind of like Evil Dead 2, just redoing Evil Dead.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was going to be. Like, we're going to re-record the old songs, we're going to update them, and maybe we'll throw in like a new idea or 3.
Yeah.
And as I kept writing, we kept cutting an old song. Because we were like, oh, we want to do 10 or 11 songs. And I have like, all right, 7 of them are old songs. There's 8 of them are old songs. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, we can cut that one. We'll do 7 and we'll do 5 new ones. And I was like, oh, we'll do 6. It wound up being that we did 2. I think. We just did 2 that we were like, we could re-record. And there were ones that we didn't even release. There were just old songs that I had been writing that we never released. So technically we just did all new songs, which was good. And every album we do now, I think like, oh, I can do better than that.
You recently completed a UK tour, prior to that an acoustic run. Are you going to be coming back to the UK at any point in the near future?
Yes, 100%. The acoustic run was unbelievable. Jarrett from Bowling for Soup and my brother, Rob, invited me to come open, and we played the Boys in Lacey. That's where you and I met. The Sugar Mill, is that what it's called?
Good memory.
I did that tour. Unbelievable tour. Never done an acoustic tour before, and it was interesting trying my songs acoustic. Guys in Lacey backed me up, and they did an awesome job, made it sound really good. And Jarrett said to me, he's like, all right, you've been here. He's like, now you got to come back. I was like, okay, so how do I do that? Talk to the Dolly Rots, see if they want to go. So I called Lewis and Kelly, and I was like, there's a lot of people in England who like our band. Like, not a lot, but a lot for us. If we have 100 people a night who are there to see our band, like, we're super excited. Like, holy shit, we're in England and there's 100 people a night coming to see us play. So I talked to Lewis and Kelly. I said, look, the acoustic tour, really good for me. We get tons of messages online for us to come back. I know you guys don't really ever do a headline thing. Like, let's go back together. So we did 2 months ago now, February. And that was unbelievable. That went even better than I think all of us expected, including Lewis and Kelly. I think they were equally as excited as we were. So then when I talked to Jared about it again, I said, well, that tour went really good. He's like, yeah. He's like, now you got to go back again. I was like, yes, we do. So the plan is to 100% come back. Either we're going to come back very end of this year or very beginning of next year, either on our own or it's going to be opening for somebody.
Fantastic, man.
Definitely coming back to the UK.
Anything you've not had a chance to do over here so far that you need to check off the list? I know you got to do Stonehenge and Abbey Road last time.
They were both awesome. I still didn't get to eat haggis. I want to do that. I had my full English, but the other guys didn't. I think that needs to happen. They need to have like that big old breakfast.
What about Liverpool, being a Beatles fan?
Yes, me and Anthony had thought of every way possible to try and go to Liverpool on this last tour. It was just 35 minutes too far to the west of where we were, and we couldn't do it. But if we come back through, Liverpool is going to be an absolute must for us. We have to go. I'd also would like to do a little more just exploratory stuff. I want to go back to a lot of the same places just to have more time and do other things. When we went to London, for instance, it's so much traffic and it's so wide that after we were done with Abbey Road, we didn't have time to see anything else. We got to the show, everything was done, and we had to go to the airport. We didn't get to really spend time seeing like even the touristy stuff, the Eye and Buckingham, and we want to do that. We want to go walk around and be tourists for a day or spend a little more time in Scotland. I don't think we got enough of it. And I would like to go to some of the areas that we didn't get to on this last time and just see them. Just some more country exploring and some more food exploring. You know, everyone got their fill of Weatherspoons and Nando's and KFC. So I like to have a couple more different culinary explorations.
Super, man. And just to throw it back to the films at the end, will you be going to watch Return of the Jedi when it returns to the cinema in April?
I saw that yesterday, and I was going to text my brother, actually. I would like for him and I to go together if we're going to go. So we'll see. As long as it is the unedited, talking like theatrical release 1983. That's what I want to see.
They got to take out that shitty Jabba the Hutt dance sequence.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. If there's shit like that in there, I don't want to see it because I'll be pissed.
And what ghost is it going to be at the end? What Force ghost?
It's got to be Sebastian Shaw. So yeah, it has to be the theatrical 1983 release. Otherwise...
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the 40th anniversary, so you got to show that one.
Yeah, don't show the special edition. I don't want to see the special edition. Or the special edition, where it's like, he did like 4 versions. He like,
oh man,
he did the special edition in the mid-90s, and then the DVD version and the Blu-ray version. They kept changing it and changing it and changing it.
You can't leave it alone.
No, I just want to see 1983 theatrical release. That's it. If that's what it is, I'll be there, 100%.
I love it, man. And you're one of the people who enjoys red letter media stuff. I mentioned that to everybody.
Oh my God.
People look at me very blankly, but their commentary of the prequels, I can't put it into words how I feel about the prequels. I just say, just go and watch the red letter media stuff, and they just nail it.
That's exactly what I tell people too. That's how I got into red letter media, like most people probably. I was pissing my pants laughing watching it. Me and Sarah watch them every week. Every time they put a video out, I watch every video they do. I watch all their best of the worst, half in the bag.
So good.
Everything they do. I think those guys are brilliant. And like I said, I love movies. And watching people who make movies or who understand the interesting stuff about lighting and timing. And I love watching that perspective. I'm like, oh, like this is why they did this or whatever. But I also love when they watch terrible old movies and laugh at those. So every time we play in Milwaukee, I put all of them on the guest list and I tweet at them. They never came, but maybe one day they will. That's my hope.
Well, we'll give them a shout here. Red Letter Media. Everyone needs to go and check them out.
Yes, please.
Ted, it's been awesome to chat with you, mate. I'll let you go. But I say, when you're on tour, you never get a chance to hang out properly if you're not in the same van and all that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's been awesome to chat with you, mate. And I look forward to when you get back to the UK, hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, we'll hang out better next time. We'll hang proper.
It's a date, man.
Thanks so much, man. Absolute pleasure.
Massive thanks to Ted Felicetti for chatting with me right here on the Straight to Video podcast. Super cool guy, and I look forward to when he and the band can return to the UK, as their shows are really a lot of fun and they're all great dudes. Don't forget to check out the new single Numb from Don't Panic, which is out today if you're listening on the day this show goes live, and keep up to date with everything at don'tpanicofficial.com. If you want to check out more episodes of this podcast, you can find them all at stvpod.com with some straight-to-video music, videos, and merchandise. We also have a Patreon page to help support this show at patreon.com/stvpod. And don't forget about our 80s video shop in Alfreton, Derbyshire, which you can visit at weekends, and it'll transport you back in time to the old school video shops we all grew up in. If you want to learn more about that, then you can visit www.80svideoshop.co.uk, or it's all over social media simply at 80s Video Shop. Wow, that's a lot of plugs. We did them though. So that's it for today's show. Thanks for listening, and remember to always be kind. Please rewind and unwind, and I'll speak to you all real soon.